Okay, you guys, here's what it's called. Matthew 24:15. It is called the Abomination of Desolation. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. This is at the midpoint of the tribulation. Tribulation lasts 7 years. So at 3.5 years, the abomination of desolation occurs. Christ mentions the key event upon which the entire passage turns when he speaks of the abomination of desolation. What is he speaking about? The key passages in Daniel that mention the term abomination of desolation are Daniel 9:27, 11:31, and 12:11. Let's see what these say. Daniel 9:27. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Daniel 11:31. An arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that marketh desolate. You see, the temple is no longer a holy place. They would be performing sacrifices to God in the temple. The Antichrist stops them from doing the sacrifices any longer. What he does, he puts an image of himself in the temple, and everyone is made to worship him, which is what you're seeing out here with all of these demon slayers as they desecrate God's house. Daniel 12:11. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. This is a technical term, which means that it has a precise and consistent meaning in all three passages. The phrase refers to an act of abomination that renders, in this case, the temple something unclean. This animal was singing about witches and referring to me as he was doing this. Singing about witches in God's house. And those people that run that church or own that church allowed him to do it. They have brought Satan right on the stage, and they were worshiping Satan in God's house. And all those sleepers there were laughing and clapping and joking at the expense of Jesus Christ. In Daniel 11:31, a prophecy was written by Daniel in the 6th century BC about a future system ruler by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes, who reigned over Syria 175 to 164 BC, about 400 years after Daniel. History, of course, has recorded the reign of this man. In verse 31, Daniel prophesied about his activity. They shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. Desolate meaning God is not there. God is not there. They're worshiping Satan in God's house. This would be very difficult to understand if it were not for the fact that it has already been fulfilled. Anyone can go back to the history of Antiochus Epiphanes and discover what he did as recorded in the apocryphal books of 1 and 2 Maccabees. He was a great persecutor of the children of Israel and did his best to stamp out the Jewish religion, and wanted to place in its stead a worship of Greek pagan gods. And these people want to worship witches. That's who they sing about in God's church, is witches. One of the things he did was to stop animal sacrifices in the temple. He offered a sow, an unclean animal, on the altar in a deliberate attempt to desecrate and render it unholy for Jewish worship. You singing about witches in God's house. You have made that place unholy. You have made that place unholy. First Maccabees 1:54 specifically records that the Abomination of Desolation was set up, fulfilling Daniel 11:31 in the Holy of Holies. Antiochus set up a statue of a Greek god. Antiochus set up a statue of a Greek god. The Antichrist will be setting up a statue of himself. And these demons are paving the way for this to happen, while you all have lost your way, and you laugh at these idiots and these demons that worship witches in God's house. And you all laugh at them, and you look up to them, and you call them anointed. In keeping with the prophecy, the daily sacrifices were stopped, the sanctuary was polluted, desolated, and made an abomination. That's what that demon just did. That is what that demon just did. Dr. Randall Price agrees. In my own study of the phrase, in the context of the temple desecration, I discovered the phrase served as a technical reference to the introduction of an idolatrous image or an act of pagan sacrilege within the sanctuary that produces the highest level of a ceremonial impurity. Temple profanation. Temple profanation. This is what that demon just did in that church. This is what that demon just did in that church. What does the Bible say about the third temple? 2 Thessalonians 2, 1-17. Now concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our being gathered together to him, we ask you, brothers, not to be quickly shaken in mind or alarmed, either by a spirit or a spoken word or a letter seeming to be from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. Let no one deceive you in any way, for that day will not come unless the rebellion comes first. This is what you're seeing. And the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. Do you not remember that when I was still with you, I told you these things. Matthew 24:15. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Daniel 9:24-27. 70 weeks are decreed about your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal both vision and prophet, and to anoint the most holy place. Know therefore and understand that from the going out of the word to restore and build Jerusalem to the coming of an anointed one, a prince, there shall be 7 weeks. That for 62 weeks it shall be built again with squares and moat, but in a troubled time. And after the 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Its end shall come with a flood, and to the end there shall be war. Desolations are decreed, and he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, and for half of the week he shall put an end to the sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate, until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. Daniel 11:31. Forces from him shall appear and profane the temple and fortress, and shall take away the regular burnt offering, and they shall set up the abomination that makes desolate. Revelation 11:1-2. Then I was given a measuring rod like a staff, and I was told, rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship there, but do not measure the court outside the temple. Leave that out, for it is given over to the nations, and they will trample the holy city for 42 months. 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4. Let no one deceive you in any way, for that day will not come unless the rebellion comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. 2 Thessalonians 2:4, who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. 2 Corinthians 6:16, what agreement has the temple of God with idols? For we are the temple of the living God, as God said, I will make my dwelling among them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Isaiah 14:1-2, for the Lord will have compassion on Jacob and will again choose Israel, and will set them in their own land, and sojourners will join them, and will attach themselves to the house of Jacob, and the peoples will take them and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel will possess them in the Lord's land as male and female slaves, and they will take captive those who were their captors and rule over those who oppressed them. Matthew 24:1-51. Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. But he answered them, you see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us when these things will be, and what will be the sign of your coming, and of the close of the age. And Jesus answered them, see that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. I'm going to leave this here. I will put this in the description for you guys to read it. All I can tell you, people, if you are not unbelievably enraged by what you saw in that video, then you really need to check yourself, because you are nowhere near a follower of Christ and you are nowhere near saved. That's really all I want to say.